Amma, I connected to you on TikTok. I saw that you had quite a sad, heartbreaking story that you wanted to tell the world, and I just wanted to be a platform for you to tell this story. So I'm just going to sit back and let you, speak about what's been happening for you and your family, and then we can get into it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, appreciate you giving us the platform. Obviously, I'm speaking on like behalf of my family and whatnot, and it's been a difficult time. But the general story, obviously, my daughter, we lost my daughter. She was a twin, and we lost her in the context of what's being called the Nottingham maternity scandal. So I can't like give exact locations of things, but I'm sure people can infer like what's where the things I'm saying have happened. But yeah, so my daughter was born a twin. I had twins in September 2022, and at the hospital we were at, like right from the start when they were born, there was immediately problems. Um, my daughter and son, because they were premature, they were 25 weeks, which is really premature. They were put on a certain machine that I'll say that I'm sure people can imagine that it helps with your breathing. Um, and things went wrong, and they began bleeding from their lungs because certain machines in the hospitals, if you misuse them, as I'm sure has happened during like things that people we've been through, like big health scares, and like where people have had to be locked down and things. When certain machines that they use, um, they can cause damage basically if they're not used right. So yeah, my children will cause damage, and we try to like raise concerns about this to the hospital, and yeah, they just started framing us basically. They started falsely accusing us, saying that we didn't want our kids to have oxygen. They started accusing me of being a domestic abuser. Pretty much anything that they could do to cover up what had happened. I won't say if they did it, but what had happened, let's say. Um, and so this went on, and eventually we had like meetings and things where they'd say things, we'd say things, we'd go like back and forth. But eventually, like my children started to get better, the twins started to get better, and we were there monitoring them, caring for them. Obviously, I was working at the time, but I'll be going onto the ward, on the neonatal ward. Yeah, it then transpired that on one day, I had a question. My daughter had a different mask on. So I had a question like, oh, what's that mask? So then the staff member says to me, oh, yeah, I'll go and get the doctor and she'll tell you, I'll go and get a consultant and she'll tell you like what's going on. And because I had like really like, I wanted to be really involved. So I had a lot of questions that like the nurses couldn't answer. Sometimes they would show that they're not very well trained, don't have the right, I won't say they're not trained. I perceive them as not having the right answers because of the lack of communication. Um, Sometimes people aren't trained well in these wards. But so yeah, we'd said they'd advise us, okay, speak to the consultants if you have any questions. So I said to this woman, yeah, I have this question about the mask. Could you get the consultant? So then the consultant comes over, who I thought was a consultant comes over, and she said, I heard you have questions about the machine that loads of people go on when they have certain diseases. So I'm like, yeah, like I just wanted to know, like, because the consultant before told me that this can damage your lungs. So I'm trying to understand, are you like balancing it between the damage it causes and also like the benefit it brings? And I was like, are there less invasive machines? So I'm asking questions, just polite conversation. And then she just says to me, like, no, this machine doesn't cause any damage. So I'm like thinking in my head, like, I'm confused because it's well established in the medical literature that these machines, if you misuse them, can cause damage. And not even if you misuse them, they do damage the lungs. If you're on them for a long amount of time, if it's being misused, if it's been used with high pressure, there's so many things that can go wrong. Like this is a machine that probably has one of the highest death rates of any machine, right? So she's like, it doesn't cause any damage. So then I literally was confused. So I said to her, but the consultant told me that it does cause damage. And then she kind of was like a deer in headlights, and she's just like realizing like, oh, I've said something wrong. So then me and I'm there with my family as well. So we're all just looking at her like, yep, like what's up, like what's going on? And then she's just like, this conversation's over. And then she just got like defensive, basically. She's like, this conversation's over. So then I'm like, okay, like what do you mean? And then another nurse heard her say, this conversation's over. And because I had been asking questions before, making allegations of medical negligence, she's then took this as an opportunity to try and accuse. Let me just dial it back a bit. So I'm not going to necessarily accuse her of anything, right,
Mm.
in this particular circumstance. So, but I will say that this is a matter that's in court. Let's say it like that. So, yeah, the other nurse comes over and then she says, yeah, you need to leave. So I'm like, why do I need to leave? Like, what have I done? She says, if you don't leave, we're going to call security on you. So then we're like, okay, like this is clearly like some weird, like, like defensive tactic that you're using against me. So then we voluntarily leave. The next day we call up to do a complaint. And when we call up, they say to me, yeah, you need to come in because you assaulted a staff member.
Oh,
So I'm like, how did I assault a staff member? I'm calling to make a complaint about staff member. So then we come back in, and then they're basically saying like, look, a lot of the staff feel that you're being very aggressive, and I'm like, I'm being aggressive. I haven't done anything. She was aggressive to me, and even when I was, I'll leave this part, but I was barged as well by someone, right? So, so I'm like, how am I being aggressive? They're being aggressive to me. I called to make the complaint. So then they start trying to like restrict my hours and things like that, but it ended up that they didn't. So we end up staying on the ward, and then we're now believing like everything's fine basically because this event happens. They said we're not going to accuse you of doing anything, but just we're going to try and restrict your hours. I said I'm not having you restrict my hours. They said right, okay. 3 days later, I get a contact from the hospital saying that Children's Social Services has been called on my family because they're saying that I'm being aggressive and that I'm refusing medical treatment. Now, I'm clearly not refusing medical treatment. I'm clearly making an allegation of medical negligence. It's very, very clear to everyone.
mm.
But they're now saying that I'm disputing a life-saving treatment, which means that that my kids are at risk of me refusing other treatments. But and the crazy thing about it is that when they use this machine on my kids, both of them started bleeding from the lungs. So and they actually admitted to me that yes, something has gone wrong, but they only admitted it after I pressed them on it, right? So they were trying to like cover it up and hide it. So anyway, allegedly. So anyway, so then they're now saying like I'm a risk to my kids because I'm being aggressive and because they think I won't seek medical treatment. So I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. This goes on. And now this is where it gets weird. So we're now on the ward and they've called children's social services on us, but there's like this process they have to go through. So we're just like, okay, we're just not going to do anything, not going to speak to them, and nothing's going to happen. So that's what happened. 2, 3 months went by. We're just talking to staff. I'll give you some of the occasions. So there was an occasion where I said to a staff member, I was like, oh, my daughter's doing really well because she moved on to a less invasive machine called CPAP. So I'm like, oh, my daughter's doing well on CPAP. My wife's agreeing. We're like, oh, she's having breaks on this, and she was having breaks at this time. So we're like, okay, would it be possible for us to extend the breaks? Like, how does this work? So the nurse says, oh, let me go and get the doctor. The doctor comes, I explain my rationale. The doctor says, yep, I agree with you. She writes down in the notes, I agree with dad. And then they extend the breaks. Nothing goes wrong. Continues. Another instance occurs where a nurse, my son is almost ready to come off oxygen. So I'm like, oh, when is he? And this is literally, he's on 0.01 liters per minute. That's the lowest possible oxygen setting for anything. So I'm like, oh, is he ready to come off? Like, when's he ready to come off? So she's answering questions, and I'm like, oh yeah, when do you remove it? Like, do you allow the child to get saturated really high on the oxygen and then remove it, or do you decrease it and then as they get used to the decrease amounts, then you slowly take it off? So it's like she's not like understanding what I'm saying, but like it's kind of clear what I'm saying. So at the end, I'm like, oh, have you got any like studies I can read? And she tells me about the study they have. It's called the Boost study. I go off and read it. I come back. I'm like, oh, I read the study. Like I've seen like there's saturation limits for this old study and for the new study. Nothing happens. Things go on. And then an event happens where my daughter is desaturating, so she's going a bit down on her oxygen. Oh, this all makes sense in a minute. So she's going. This is the third event. So she's going like down on her oxygen. And the day before, a nurse had said that, yeah, this machine's faulty. It's going to be changed the next day. So in the morning, the numbers are all jumping around. So when my daughter starts going down, there's 3 nurses nearby me. And I'm like, they're saying like, oh, she's going down. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to turn up the oxygen? And I said, wait, they said that this machine was going to be changed. Can you go and check? Oh, no, they said this machine was going to be changed. So a nurse says, okay, I'll go and check. So one of them goes to check. Then there's still 2 nurses there. The nurses that are there start turning the oxygen up, and I just don't say anything. I'm just standing there. We're all just standing there, right? So then after that, um we then have a meeting with the children's social care people, and then they're like, yeah, so apparently, like, you don't want your kids to have oxygen, you're interfering with the treatment, you're causing delays. And we're just like, wait, what? Like,
Mm.
because it's been 2 months since we first had contact from them, and our whole strategy is like, we're not going to do anything, right? So we're just like, what are you talking? Like, we're literally so confused that it's unreal. Like, and the crazy part is we have nurses on the ward that we have good relationships with. So we're like friendly, like they're giving us hugs. So they're just like, yeah, you're causing all this trouble and you don't want your kids to have oxygen. They're like, yeah, you've harmed your children already. I'm like, harmed already? Like, I'm working most days. So I would say I've been out of that 2 month period. I was there maybe like 2 weeks out of the 2 months. So I'm like, how? Like, I haven't even been here. Like, what are you talking about? She's like, no, like, she gets his medical report. And the medical report saying like that I'm being aggressive to all the staff. And then it starts listing these events. So it lists the first event and it says that I caused a 40-minute delay in my child's oxygen being increased. And this is the event where the doctor said to me that she was going to extend the oxygen time. So I'm like, no, I didn't do that. Like, the doctor did that. Then the next one, they're like, that I they're saying that I asked the nurse, that me questioning the nurse about the oxygen made them believe that I didn't want my child to have oxygen. But then I'm like, but hang on. I looked at we found the notes and I'm like, but they removed the oxygen on their own the next day. So I'm asking on the 9 at like 9 p.m. on the 16th, they removed the oxygen without even my input on the 17th. So I'm like, how is that a risk when I've identified that the oxygen needs to be removed and so has the doctor? So then the next thing is that they're saying that when I asked the staff member to check if the machine's working, they're saying I caused a delay that could have caused my daughter to die because they're saying I stopped them from turning up the oxygen. And I'm like, but they turned the oxygen up right in front of me. And they're like, no, but you had to be convinced. And they had to go and get another senior staff member. I'm like, no, the member went to check to see if the machine was going to change. And the one that was still there turned up. I'm like, none of this happened. It's just all made up. So then they're like, oh no, like you're not understanding the concerns. You're not understanding the concerns. And I'm like, no, I understand the concerns. I'm literally telling you that that stuff just did not happen. Like, they're
Mm.
like, no, like you're disagreeing. It says you've been aggressive. I'm like, I'm saying to them, like, when have I been aggressive? They're like, it said security. It says here security needed to be called on you. I'm like, no, I didn't do it. I'm like, I didn't do anything. She was aggressive to me. We called to do a complaint, and then they twisted it and started falsely accusing us. And
Mm.
I'm thinking to myself, it's so crazy because we drop this stuff in our head. We're like, right, like just don't cause a scene about it. So we dropped it, and then they're like twisting it back on us. So my daughter was still on like the higher dependency ward, and my son had been moved to the lower. So I was thinking to myself, like, right, what we're gonna do is we need to alert the authorities of this because these people are now engaging in what I allege is a form of fraud. Like they're allegedly falsifying documents, and we can't understand the motivation behind it as well. And it's interesting because we also had maintained our allegations of medical negligence. So I was saying consistently, something is wrong with my daughter. Something is wrong with my daughter. Something is wrong with her lungs. She's having mucus. Something's wrong with her. And they're categorically denying it. She has no mucus. Dad doesn't understand the concerns. He doesn't want to own the machine. I'm saying, no, I'm saying I believe that machine caused her harm, right? So I'm maintaining my position, but we're building bridges. I'm doing like we literally are communicating effectively. Everything's going fine, but it's like it's almost like the management has this view of us, and then some of the nurses are just fine with us. But then there's a faction of nurses that have this issue with us, but we don't understand why. So anyway, I'm like, okay, so I think this progresses, and then the social worker says to us like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the staff, and I'm going to kind of like take what you said and cross-reference it with them. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then we're still on the ward taking care of our kids. They're getting better, improving. And my daughter was meant to have this scan. So, and this is now we're late. So my kids were born in September. This is now we're in like December. So my daughter's meant to have this scan. And so my wife's saying to them, like, oh, like she's meant to have this scan. Like, what's going on with the scan? They're just like, oh, we don't know anything about scan. And then around this time, so my kids start getting better. Other things happen as well, but I don't want to get into the super detail because that's more for court about the allegations we have. They're quite serious allegations. I'm just sticking to the things that are indisputed in terms of like undisputed, sorry. So then anyway, we then are on the ward, and then the social worker comes back. So we're thinking like this is all going to get dropped. And mind you, they also wanted to give our kids like the thing, some of the things, right? But we're saying like they're premature.
Mhm.
You're not even giving it to them at the right time. And on top of that, like that's not even up to you. That's up to us. So just don't worry about it. If we want that, we'll let you know. So then so then everything is getting better with our kids. We're getting ready to leave. The nurses tell us, yeah, you're ready to leave. Then suddenly the social worker comes back and they're like, yeah, you're not going to like this. We're like, oh, yeah, what? They're just like, yeah, we're submitting to take your kids away from you in court. I'm like, what?
What?
What? Like, we're literally like, when I say confusion doesn't even like explain, I'm literally thinking to myself, because I'm like, so I've been at work, I've been coming here, we've been feeding them, we've been engaging in everything, like playing with them, singing them songs. Everyone can see that we're great parents. Everybody can see this. And I'm just thinking, I don't understand what is going on. She's like, yeah, and I'm like, can you give me the whole time when she was making the allegations before? I'm like, can you give me evidence of this? They didn't give us any evidence. So for 3 months, they're making allegations, but we've not seen any notes, any evidence. We've requested the medical notes, they haven't sent them to us. So we're like, what is going on? She gives me this list, it's like a chronology. And I'm just reading this thing, and I'm just like, wow, it's just 5 months of events that just didn't happen.
Mm.
Dad tried to take the oxygen off. Dad didn't want the kids to have oxygen. Like, it's just all of these false allegations, even allegations against my wife, like, oh, she doesn't want her to, like, just completely made up stuff. So then anyway, they're like, yeah, we have to go to court. Like, what? And then, so this is now around Christmas time. And then I'm telling people that I know, like, I literally have not done anything, but like, because of how many allegations they made, people are like, you must have done something. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. I literally haven't done anything. It's not that I must have done something. I haven't done
Mm.
anything.
Mm.
At the start, there was times when my kids were bleeding from the lungs. There was times where I was a bit like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on? Like, but it wasn't nothing to the kids, no safeguarding, nothing like that. And we got past it, all of that stuff. So I'm thinking like,
Mm.
what's going on? So it's around Christmas time now, and we're on the ward with our kids. Or before that, they were saying that we're not allowed to be alone with our kids. So now we've got these two newborns. They're saying we're not allowed to be alone with them. We're like, wow. And this is after one of the staff actually said to us, yeah, you can be alone, you can go to the transition room. And another staff member comes and said, no, you're not allowed to be in the transition room. So we're like, wow, this is now bordering on less potential illegal, you know what I'm saying? So so we contact the police, all of this stuff. Police decide they're not doing anything. I send an email to like 40 organizations, help, urgent, desperate. This
Mm.
is not right. I believe this is illegal. This is what they're doing. All of this stuff's false. So then, yeah, around Christmas time, all the staff pretty much leave. So there's like hardly any staff there. We're there with our kids, but they're saying like we're a safeguarding risk, but like they're not even there, and we're there taking care of them, and so it doesn't even make sense. They're like,
Mm.
you're a risk to your kid. You can't be alone with them. Then they'll go off for Christmas, and we're just there like, okay. So and the funny thing is, like, we don't smoke, we don't drink, like, we don't party, like, no drugs, nothing. Like, we're like teetotal. Like, at this time, I was like super
Mm.
Christian, like, nothing else. Like, just, and, you know, I was also working in medical sales. So I'm not saying I'm a doctor, but like, I had to interpret scientific information. You know, like, I've worked in different jobs, I've worked in pharmacies, I've done like internships with like big pharmaceutical companies, like, I've got like a background in science. And my wife's job was that she worked with vulnerable children on ventilators. So I shouldn't say it, but I'll say that again. I don't know if you want to cut it, but
Yeah, okay.
my wife worked with vulnerable children on certain machines that are used for vulnerable children, let's say.
Mm.
So that was her role. So like, we are pretty much like completely well-rounded and able to care for the children. We're not disputing anything at this point. There's so much duress against us that we're just pretty much saying yes to everything except for the thing, right? The things.
Mm.
So so then yeah, so then they're just like, yeah, we're going to take you to court. So now like, we're just on the ward, and it's just we're getting mistreated, like, because people now have this perception, because they have something called, they don't have continuity of care. So what happens is, nurse comes in, she's there for like a week, she goes, another nurse comes. So they're just circulating different people. So every time these new people come, they're reading all these notes, and they're
Mm.
like, yep, safeguarding concerns, domestic violence, and we're just like, none of this is true at all. Like, but they're adamant because we're telling them none of this is true, but they're just adamant. No, look, we can see the history in the notes, and we're just like, it's not true. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It's not true. So then we end up having to go to court. They start preparing these court proceedings. But now, obviously, the key issue is, what about my daughter? What's going on with my daughter? So my daughter, she was ready to be discharged, but they're actually now, and this we also allege is illegal, they're actually now withholding discharge because they are saying that because of the safeguarding issues, they're withholding discharge. But the thing is, the scan that they're supposed to do is the discharge scan, and it's a heart scan.
Mm.
But they're saying we're not doing the scan because they know that if they do it,
They can
it
let go.
potentially would show like they're ready to go. Do you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So they don't do it. Then my daughter starts kind of like getting this mucus that I'm telling about. So she's getting better, but I'm still saying to them like, guys, like you need to look at this mucus. Like I'm telling you, and they're writing in notes. Nope, dad doesn't understand the concerns. There's no mucus, and then the vigilance of the staff is now at a level where it's like, if you just take bias and hypervigilance, you can imagine like I'm literally going there, lifting up my baby. They're like, dad lifted up the baby at an angle that we didn't like every little thing. Like I'll say to them, like, excuse me, would you mind checking the probe? Dad doesn't trust the equipment, like anything I say. And when I say I'm going out of my way now to just not do anything that could be perceived in any way,
Mm.
every little thing I do. And they're also making up lies. So I can't give you certain instances again because it's matters for court, and I don't want to draw too much reference to certain individuals. But suffice it to say, we catch them red-handed multiple
Good.
times.
Good. I was gonna say, like,
Actually,
you should have recorded it on your phone, like voice memos, you know?
I forgot to tell you that. So we were secretly recording as well. So that's another thing that got their gripe is that they figured out that we was recording them, and
Good.
we've actually now caught, allegedly, let's say, caught people doing certain things, caught people potentially, let's say sometimes people frame people, let's say that.
Mm.
Sometimes people frame people for things. And if someone was trying to frame you, it'd be good if you caught them on recording, right?
Mm.
Like red-handed. so so yeah, I'll move on. So anyway, what about the scan? So now we're at we're still there and it's later, but we know now like we're supposed to actually be gone. Nurses are saying to us, you're not meant to be here. My kids are actually past post term now, so they're not premature anymore, basically. But then my daughter's having this mucus, so I'm basically saying to them consistently, still, I'm like, she's been injured, and I believe that she's got mucus because her body has had this injury in her lungs. But because they're denying it, they don't want to address the concern, basically, allegedly. So my daughter then starts kind of desaturating. She starts needing more oxygen. And I'm saying to them, she needs more oxygen because she has mucus in her lungs. Listen to me. I'm telling you, I can hear it. They're writing in the notes, no mucus, nothing. So then later they say to us, look, we think that she needs to go back onto this certain machine. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I know about this machine. She has an injury caused by this machine. I say this is all recorded. I say, if you put her back on this machine, it's not going to be good. I can tell you that. They're like, no, you're not a doctor. You don't understand the concerns. I'm saying, look, the reason her oxygen is going down is because she needs the scan. And my wife's saying she needs a scan. And I'm saying she's filled with mucus. They're not listening to us. They're reading the safeguard concerns, writing made up lies. And if you can imagine, if you say all this stuff about people, it
Mm.
colors your perception of them. So if I come on and you've never met me and I'm like, this is why it is, and then you read the notes, you're like, well, this guy's a domestic abuser that doesn't want his kids to be treated. You're not going to listen to what I have to say. So they're thinking that we're idiots, basically, but we're not idiots. We know
Mm.
exactly
Mm.
what we're talking about. So anyway, they're like, no, we're going to put her back on the machine. I'm like, listen, if I say no, you're going to try and take my kids. So I'm trying to minimize the things that can cause them to take my kids because we still have to go to court. They've
Mm.
got to give
Mm.
us a court date and everything over stuff that we haven't even done. So then, they're like, yeah, we're going to put your daughter back on this thing. As soon as they put her back on it, lungs collapse,
Mm.
like critical condition. The first thing they say to us, oh, her lungs are filled with mucus. So they've not been listening to us. But to be fair, the reason they put her back on it is because they finally did the scan that they needed to do, and they found out that she had a condition that they should have picked up on 2 months ago. And it's a condition directly related to, like production of mucus, and it's not like a rare condition. It happens a lot, but hers is like now really exacerbated because they should have done it back in November,
Mm.
and because they're trying to
Yeah,
allegedly trying to
yeah.
take our kids from us, they're focusing on what they're supposed to be doing, we
What
allege.
what's the
So,
condition? What's the condition called? You know?
okay, it's called pulmonary hypertension. So, pulmonary hypertension is like basically high blood pressure in your lungs.
Right.
So, one of the key things about pulmonary hypertension is you're supposed to detect it and treat it early. So if you can imagine, if they detect, this is 2 months now. In fact, I think it's actually more than 2 months since they documented that she needs a scan, and it's consistent every week. She needs a scan. She needs a scan, and they're telling us they don't know anything about it, but we're telling them she needs a scan. She doesn't have a scan. Lungs collapse. Um, and there's other things that happen, but they're so incendiary and such a matter for the court that I can't say them. They are much worse than the things I've told you. But eventually, my daughter, from going on and having a lungs collapse, a few days later, they're saying to us, "Oh, she won't. She's not going to survive." A few days before that, like a week before that, when her oxygen started going down a little bit, it was going down a little bit, not much. This is like she does
Mm.
need more support, but it's not like oh my god. It's just you can if you look at her in pictures and videos, she's just fine, but her oxygen requirements up a bit. But basically, they on the day we had been requesting to move hospital, they wouldn't let us move because of all the things that they had going on, right? So then we finally took it to the divisional director and we're like, we need to leave now. Like we had a meeting, everything, and they're like, right, we're going to arrange a movement, you to move. And the CEO was even involved in this. So it's now our concerns are now even reaching high levels because we're making such an alarm about what these people are doing.
Mm.
So anyway, um, they then organize a move on the day we're supposed to move. They come back and say to us, "Oh, Adaora has the thing from 2019. Adaora has the thing from 2019."
Oh God.
So we're now like, oh, all of a
So-
sudden, when we're supposed to be moving, that she now has the thing that people imagine from 2019 that may or may not be a thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we're like, okay, so she's all of a sudden when we're supposed to move, she now needs to isolate for 2 weeks. Right, okay, cool. And I think this was about 6 January. So she then isolated. And the funny thing is, she isolated, she improved, and then they did two, I think two more, another test on that. By the way, didn't even do the first one while consent, allegedly. And then, well, in fact, they didn't have consent.
Mm.
But she's then test negative. So then the funny thing is when her lungs collapsed on the day that they collapsed, they're saying to us like, "Oh yeah, this is all because of the thing from 19." And I'm like, "No, it's because of the
Hmm.
injury we told you about. You because you didn't listen to the late scan and the fact that you've just collapsed her lungs. Like, what are you talking about?" They're like, "No, no, no, it's from this." So then they've actually even put her on the protocol for the thing.
Oh God.
Obviously none of it's working because it's barotrauma. We allege that it's a barotrauma injury. Like, and I'll proceed to obviously my daughter eventually dies from what we allege is certain injuries, and that we even have the post mortem over all of these things. And the funny thing is the post mortem. Well, it's not funny, but the strange thing is the post mortem actually says that she has this injury to, let me not say injury, she has a region of her lungs that could be, in the opinion of a medical professional, caused by a barotrauma injury, or it could be caused by an infection incidentally. So they're
Mm.
like, it's the infection, not the injury. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm.
Do you need me to clarify that at all?
Yeah. So what
So,
what
so
what was
basically,
the
remember
what
they
was the what was the medical protocol though that they put her on? You know, and you mentioned for
the
the C.
protocol is for it. So the protocol is, yeah, it's basically like certain medications. Now, the thing that's complex with her is
Mm.
she had the pulmonary hypertension as well. She definitely did have it, but obviously it's exacerbated from them not doing the scan. But so the protocol is like a joint protocol of trying to decrease the blood pressure in the lungs, and also they believe that she has this thing conveniently because if it was just the other things, then you can
Mm.
imagine, right? And the funny thing about it is they're saying that she has this thing from 19, but like
Mm.
she's a newborn. So
Yeah.
if you
Exactly.
look up like the UK,
Yeah. It's
look
impossible.
up the UK.
Impossible. They didn't give her any. They didn't give her any kind of J or V, should we say, or
Well,
they didn't give her any drugs. Like, did they like intravenously?
they didn't give her anything like that to our knowledge. But the problem
Mm,
is we have such little faith that we don't even know what they have, because we have
mm,
allegations that are in the court about. Let me just say this: if somebody does something to your child without consent, it's medical battery, right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's not necessarily about things like that, but there are things that have happened without our consent,
Mm,
allegedly.
mm-hmm.
Like, and they've even, this is documented. So we're alleging it, whether it's true or not, that's a matter for the court, right? But we can't have confidence. Do you know what I mean?
Of course you can't.
Because
No,
of
no,
the
no.
things that,
The track record just speaks
do you
for
know what I mean?
itself. Yeah. Awful.
Yeah, and also on top of that, she's also had loads of blood transfusions. So obviously, when you're having loads, and I even raised this concern about she's having a lot of blood transfusions, but when you're having loads of blood transfusions, you're getting blood from people. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's like,
Mm,
ideally, you wouldn't want that, but obviously, you're not going to sit there and argue with a medical professional about whether a child needs a blood transfusion. That's just, you're just setting yourself up to fail. Like, I would rather her have blood that's oxygenated, you know what I mean, then. But at the end of the day, with what's going on in the medical profession these days, you don't even know the blood's got what the blood's got in it
mm.
from things that people, do you know what I'm saying? So it's
From,
like
yeah,
the
exactly.
trust is so low that
Mm,
now it's a matter for the court what our allegations are in that respect. So yeah, so my daughter passes away. Again, other things I can't go into around this, but you can imagine how a person will be when their daughter passes away, distraught, screaming, crying, all these things. And then yeah, I think that's pretty much the main gist of everything that I'm willing to speak about. But in the aftermath, there's just, I mean, put it this way, you know about like the Lucy Letby case, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the Lucy Letby case, a lot of people say that there's cover-ups. A lot of people say that, you know, that there's falsification of records, deleting things. A lot of people say that people that, you know, she's been arrested for things, and you
Mm,
know what I mean, for that she didn't necessarily do. So it's like, just on that point, I'm not saying this applies to me, but you're gonna have to kind of like make up your own mind
mm,
and stuff. But on that point, I want to tell you about a city called Nottingham that um, may or may not be relevant. Nottingham actually, as a city, has one of the highest percentages of civil servants in the country. Right,
mm,
the number one employer in Nottingham is a trust that I mentioned that there's a scandal at that trust. I won't even say the name of the trust, but that trust is the number one employer. The second employer is obviously going to be the local council, and then the third employer is probably going to be the police. So if you can imagine, right, if a person has disputes with the number one, two, and three employer, you can imagine what living in that
mm.
area is like for them in terms of like, if you're calling up for to report something, or if you're making an allegation, or if you need a subject access, you can imagine what it's like in terms of how you're being treated by these agencies, right? Not necessarily saying it's me, but you can imagine how that would be. And then on top of that, every person in the if perchance every person in one of those agencies was reading the notes, and it's saying you're a domestic abuser that tried to cause harm to your child, that doesn't want oxygen treatment, and then the child's died. So now it almost, they actually forwarded their allegations to the coroner. So the coroner's got documentation on my daughter's post-mortem saying that I've done all these things. And you can remember at the start of the story, I've explained to you what actually happened in these occasions.
Mm.
And even they're cordial. Most of the occasions are actually cordial, they're actually just normal medical. So anyway, and my daughter's passed away. But the thing is, because they've got children's social care involved, they're still trying to take us to court. So they've allegedly, my daughter's died due to negligence, and they're still trying to take our son.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say trying to take. They're still,
Yeah.
we're still going through care proceedings for my son, right? They're trying to relocate him to
Is your
another
son okay,
place,
by the
right?
way?
And
Just to quickly ask, is your son okay?
yeah, he's fine. He's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, he's fine.
Yeah.
Um, so and we would say that that's probably because of him. He didn't get put as much on certain things that we didn't want my daughter to be put on, if that makes sense.
Mm,
So when they put my daughter on this thing, we ensured that my son wasn't put on it because we knew that it had caused harm to my daughter. Does that make sense?
mm,
So luckily, he didn't suffer in the same way. He got put on a different machine that we were advocating for. So so yeah, so they're still trying to they're still taking us through these care routines. So you can imagine you're losing your daughter, and then you'll go into court because they're trying to say that you're safeguarding risk to your son, and you haven't even done anything.
Mm.
So yeah, they put like an interim order, and I think again, yeah, I don't think I want to go too much into that either because it's matters for court. But long story short, we requested for it to go to the High Court, um, and yeah, I won't even go too much into it. But basically, we were vindicated in the High Court and got custody of our son back. But the battle to expose what has happened and also to correct the record, it has just been unbelievable. And so many things have happened we that make me think about things like human rights, that make me think about fraud, that make me think about collusion. And I'm thinking about these things, and I think it's relevant for me to think about these things. But you would think
Mm.
about a lot of things if something like this had happened to you. Do you know what I mean? So
Mm.
yeah, like that's pretty much it, and that's what we've been through and are still going through. And we obviously did the documentary, and credit to them, it was with ITV, credit to them. But you know, there's just things that they can't cover. So they're gonna tell elements of the story, but they're just not gonna cover the true depth of what has happened. I'm even surprised that they allowed me to make allegations about that machine on ITV. I believe that that may have even been one of the first times ever that someone was allowed to make allegations about that machine harming people on national television. And I pushed for
Mm.
them to keep that in.
What was that
Yeah.
actual, what's the actual machine called? Can we say?
It's the machine that everyone was getting put on when the thing was happening with the
The
19.
begin
Yes.
begin with a
Yes.
V and end in an R, right?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
a
Yes. Yes.
standard VR. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
Because okay, so
Yeah.
are we so basically
And
the summary then is it's that V something R that blew out the lungs, I'm guessing it kind of, and then it caused bleeding in the lungs, which then caused the mucus and the pulmonary hypertension, right? Is that kind of what we're saying?
well, there was multiple instances
Mm.
of things like that happening. I'll say that. So it's not just one time that it happened. It's
Okay.
happened like four times. Do you know what I mean? And this is all documented in the notes. They're not
Mm.
disputing this.
Mm.
They're just, like once these people get a narrative, they're just so stubborn. They will not change their mind. Like even if they saw this, I'm telling you, they would still sit there and be like, "No, you've done something." They can't accept that they've got it wrong. But the strange thing is obviously we've got our son back now. So it's like it's really weird because it's like you're maintaining these allegations that I've like tried to remove the oxygen and all this stuff, and it's terrible. But it's like, would you really let me back with my son? Not let me back, I should say, but would I really defeat them in that way
Mm.
if I had done something like that? It's just so absurd. And I really, obviously, with on another note, with the scandal going on in Nottingham, yeah, that I mean, we've obviously been part of it. It's been in the news and everything. So I might as well just say, like, obviously, it's not, we're part of the not in the maternity scandal. Like, but the thing is, the scandal's all about deaths to children, neonates, babies, and mothers.
Mm.
And it's like, this is actually the largest NHS maternity scandal in the NHS's history. And the scandal's being investigated by the police, and it's the largest police investigation in Nottingham's history.
Mm.
So the funny thing about it is like all these children, most of them that are dying and suffering serious harm on the ward. Well, let me not say all. A lot of the harm is due to something called hypoxia, not having enough oxygen, or injuries like they could get like cerebral palsy and things like that. So my opinion is, if you have the negligent use of this machine, right, it can lead to things like that. Cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is essentially brain damage.
Mm.
It's not the same thing, but it's like, come on, like your brain has been damaged. It's either going to get damaged by not enough oxygen or too much if you're on a machine like that. Could be damaged by, other things, drugs, injury. But what do they do with neonates that are not breathing, not oxygenating well? Well, they do the same thing that they do with the 19 people that, do you know what I
Mm.
mean? So it's like,
Mm.
I feel like my concerns and everything going on, just, it's like I'm at the apex of everything. And not just me, but my family. but my allegations ended up at the apex of all of this stuff, where it's like I'm saying things about the machine. The machine has documented has caused forms of harm, but it's also caused harm to a lot of people in our society,
Mm.
allegedly. Right? So it's like when you talk about the harm that that machine can cause, I'm sure it saves people's lives too. But when you talk about the harm, you're now opening Pandora's box because what you're basically saying is, well, hang on, if that machine caused harm to your child or caused harm to your relative, who else is the machine cause harm to? Because you're now presenting
Hmm.
a pathophysiology of a cause of death. You're basically saying that if your child died this way, then other children must have died this way because you're saying that negligent use of this machine can kill you. You
Mm.
follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So then, with everything that's going on in society recently, they don't want that kind of allegation. They could be anyone. They powers that be, whatever. Do they really want that kind of allegation out where other parents are hearing it, other people who are bereaved are hearing it? It
Yeah.
makes it's more easy to say, well, no, this is just prematurity. No, this is just a death from the thing, or sorry, not from the thing, but from the 19. Like they will never admit if it's a death from the thing, but much less will they admit if it's in the hospital from the protocols and the machines. Like they don't.
They don't want people
Do you know what I'm
losing
saying?
trust. Yeah, they don't want people losing trust in the institution of the NHS and all the protocols and everything like that. That's too much of a risk. They'd rather just put it down to the easy option, which is probably to the C. Well, did they? I was going to say, what did the coroner say? What did they actually put the death down to?
So they put it down as a C, and they also put it
No
down
way,
as
man.
they put
No.
it down as a C and as a P,
Oh,
as a pulmonary hypertension. So the pulmonary hypertension, she
bastards.
definitely had that. I've seen the scan. It like
Yeah.
her blood pressure in the lungs. But the interesting thing is when you get, I'm this is an allegation, but I'll just say it in a different way. When you get an injury to the lungs or to the body, your body is a super intelligent organism. So your body adjusts things
Mm, mm,
based on what happened. So you can actually get mucus, you can get what do they call it? Fibrosis,
mm,
like when the lungs become like hard, stiff, and fibrous.
mm.
You can get actual changes in the what do they call it? The cardiopulmonary system. So cardio is in to do with the heart and lungs to do with the lungs, right? So that those systems are integrated. So if your lungs are not taking in as much oxygen, your body might do something to the pressure in your body, in your pressure of,
Mm.
do you know what I'm saying, from your heart, that to correct that. Now it might not work, but you can tell that your body's trying to do that,
Hmm.
and obviously, like that can cause the extra work from that can cause enlarged heart. It can cause higher pressures, but I don't think things just happen for no reason. So there's an argument to be made that an injury like that, untreated to a lung, would result in pulmonary hypertension. And there's actually documented medical literature that I've seen that suggests that. So there's so many things at play. But yeah, the coroner ruled that, yeah, it was pulmonary hypertension. They've said it's the C thing, which is just obviously she negative in the post-mortem, tested negative in the post-mortem, negative before even being put on the machine. Like it's just a cop out. Um, and on what you were saying before about they don't want people to lose faith in the medical profession. I mean, since my daughter's died, I've spoken to a lot of people with crazy stories, just as crazy as mine. And like, I
Mm.
can tell you that I wouldn't, it's not far fetched when those people tell me that there's a vested interest. It's not just losing trust. I think there's a vested interest in people that are dying, being, having that on their post
Yeah.
mortem. And there's funding that the hospitals get.
Yeah.
It's also a cop out because if that's what killed you, then it wasn't medical negligence, was it?
Yeah.
Some would say. So yeah,
This is what's inflating. That's what's inflated all the numbers as well, and that's what makes it sound as though it's this big scary thing in 19, when really it's just all medical negligence, really, and and fudged numbers as
you're
well.
saying that, not
And we all know
you're
this.
saying you're saying that.
I'm saying it.
I'm
No, I
not
say
saying
you
that.
don't have to say anything, but I mean, I think it's pretty obvious at this point. We're not actually using any buzzwords here, guys. So out the YouTube algorithms, you can't you can't find me on this one, but Oh man, it's
Hey
just
man,
so
this is a conspiracy theory channel. Right?
yeah.
So
If you do any
yeah.
real journalism, it's conspiracy, isn't it? So I mean, that's just how. And again, that's another way that they gaslight you and prevent the truth coming out. Man, you must be so like fuck, man. You must be so angry and like upset and stressed. Like, how are you even? God, I wouldn't be holding it together if I was you. I mean, like, how have you got through this?
um my family, like my wife, like
Mm,
I would have said more about my wife, but I don't want to like speak to, do
mm,
you know what I'm saying? I don't want to go into too much detail about her. She's got her story, she was there obviously, and I
mm,
just want to protect my family as well. So that's why I mainly
mm.
spoke about me and my allegations. But
Yeah.
yeah, my wife, she's like really strong. Like my family has supported me, but most people in their family that have ideas like some of the things that I've said
Mm,
would be like a black sheep. And I'm not saying that that's
mm,
the case because
mm,
my family's great and I got a great extended family, but like
mm,
not everybody believes in the stuff that we're saying. Do you get what I'm
mm,
saying?
mm.
And not everybody has lost faith in the medical profession. So there are conclusions that people can come to, like say if you had a son, right, and like your son is being hounded by different agencies. Not saying this is me, but like your son being hounded by the police and social services and all these things. It's just like you would think, like, well, what have you done now? Do you know what I mean? But
Mm.
it's such a leap of faith to go, actually, is this whole system corrupt? And my son is like some genie that's figured it all out. What's more likely? He's figured it all out, or do you know what I mean? Like he's just a bit of a troublemaker.
Yeah.
And people like you that speak the truth to what's going on about certain things, it's like people just want to just brush it to the side. And I'm sure people might say if you're on a date with a girl and what do you do and she sees your channel, I'm sure that some women would go, you know what, like
Mm,
this guy's a nutter. It
mm.
happens to people like
Yeah.
us where
Yeah.
just you get put in this box of like, oh well, you're that's not the mainstream, and it just people
Yeah.
just discount it. But
Yeah.
my
No, no.
family's really strong. Like,
Yeah. 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 No, I was going to say, like, it, it's a shame, isn't it? People generally take the path of least resistance, which is just to believe the mainstream with everything, and then just see all the outliers, anyone that's got an alternative view, as just, oh, they're a bit of a rebel. They're just, they're kind of a troublemaker, like you said earlier. It's just sad, isn't it?
yeah.
But your family support you, right? They give you emotional support and generally.
Well, I've spoken to other like I've spoken to like psychiatrists and things like about what
Mm,
I'm going because you can imagine. And one of the things he said to me is like that you're going to have a lot of problems with what you've been through. And I said, why? And he said, because you come across well. And he said, people are not going to understand what you're going through. Because I don't want to talk about my diagnoses and things, but
mm,
like
mm,
if you went through this, mate, how would you be feeling? You wouldn't
mm,
be able to work. You wouldn't be able to sleep. I
mm,
haven't been able to work, but the psychiatrist said to me, like, you're going to have problems because you come across well spoken. But truly, mate, I'm finished, mate. Like I've lost my career, I've lost my life, my family's been affected. I've lost my daughter. My daughter was a twin. I'm looking at my son. I'm seeing my daughter. I can't sleep, mate. Like,
mm,
but you find ways to hold it together, and like the fight helps me. So some people might say, well, if you're able to speak and do this, how do you know what I mean? How come you're saying that you're going through all this? Because you're saying your story and stuff. It's like this is all I have now is my story. Do you know what I mean? Like all I
mm,
have is this
mm,
fight. I wake up every day. I can't work. I can't do this. I can't. How am I going to go working as a medical sales rep, which was my dream job, literally my dream job? How am I going to go work as that? And I'm working with the organization, the big organization in the UK that, do you know what I mean? That they're the darling of the public. And I'm the one saying that they're the bad guys. Like, how am I going to, do you know what I'm
mm,
saying? Like, liaise with those kind of professionals from those organizations. And they turn on ITV and they see me making allegations of negligence. Like, it's just destroyed my
mm,
career. And like,
mm,
how is speaking to my wife as well, like, how is my wife going to work on the machines that she used to. And some of the people need those machines because she was working with like children that actually need those machines that like wouldn't be able to survive without them. Do you know what I'm saying? How are you going to work on a machine like that when you've lost your child from that? Do you know what I mean?
mm, mm,
And it's like people ask like how we cope, mate. The truth is we're not coping, but
mm,
you have to cope when you got kids, when you got, do you know what I'm saying, a story. And like I know so many people who have dealt with um the big organization in the UK, the health organization, but then also like the social services, like the stories I've heard, mate, they are literally
Mm.
just they're just taking things for granted, and the parents don't aren't able to get them back. I'll say it like that, mate. Like they're just going in, and I think it's ramped up since since the thing. I
Yeah.
think that like they are that's like a good cover for it. Do you know what I mean? It's like with all that going on, you don't know what Sally and John's doing. Like they go in there going like, you don't want your child to be, like
Mm.
change from a man to a woman, right? They don't want that now. If you want that, if you don't want your child for that, they go in and it's a safeguarding concern. If you
Mm.
don't want it's a safeguarding concern. If you raise your voice and
Mm.
offend a woman, to say God, like I'm telling you, mate, like it is an there's groups I'm in, this is an epidemic. Like,
Mm.
and I really think that like I hate the concept of class. I hate it. I've grown up in
Mm.
different areas. I know different people. It's like I really think that some people can't put their case forward. Do you know what I'm saying? How I am, and it's like I I think that's just a testament to my family's all like the privileges I've had. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Of being able to like learn things and like some people they're not able to say right, this is in court, push it to the high court. I've got my
Yeah.
chronology. Here's my recordings. Here's my advocate. Here's my what I'm saying, my witness statement. They're not able to do that. They're not able to, and uh, like, how are they going to fare when they have someone saying, "Well, you're a safeguarding risk." You know what I'm saying? And they're going to get their kid taken. No one's going to listen to them. They're just going to think you're a wrong one,
Mm.
right? And yeah, it's funny because with them not with us not wanting the
Mm.
newborn things as well. That they made that into such a concern, and it's like it's in the law that you don't have to have those,
Mm.
right? But if you say that you don't, mate, I'm telling you, they're not letting it go. They're not letting it
Really?
go.
Really?
And I actually, mate, it depends where you are, obviously, that,
Yeah.
but the thing is, with the whole thing that's happened, remember how much it separated everyone in society. You got the people that are pro it and the people that are anti it.
Are you talking about the C thing that happened like 3 or 4 years ago? Are you talking about
So,
the,
so,
the normal jibs that all
so,
kids get throughout the years?
so I'm talking about both because what I'm
Yeah,
saying
okay.
is that whole thing with the C,
Mm.
it made everyone take sides on
Mm.
the thing with the V. Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like now people are either pro them, super pro them, or super against the V's, right?
Mm.
So the people that are pro them, they have this idea in their head that they're life saving. So
Mm.
if you now are the person coming and saying, I don't want them, now they're thinking, you don't want something that's life saving. Whereas before, let's say in maybe the 90s or whatever, before I was born, it's like before they weren't viewed so much as this is super life saving. But now, because of the rhetoric,
Yeah.
if you're anti, you're like a pariah.
Mm.
So it's funny because like I even had to I submitted a report to the High Court about one of them, which is for RSV, yeah, and I actually analyzed the data, the government data on that thing,
Mm.
and I submitted this to the court, and I worked out that the statistical likelihood of being hospitalized with that thing is like 0.0005% for an under 1 year old.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time when I didn't want my kids to have that one, they were saying, this is life saving. If they don't have it, the baby's going to die, safeguarding risk. And I believe the reason they dropped that allegation of, oh, we don't want them to have that, it's a life risk, is because my report mathematically broke down that this is a scam. I won't say it's a scam. I'll say basically like there's something called the JCVI. They give out like the guidelines on certain things. I'm sure you can imagine what those things are. And it's like the funny thing is I've worked for companies like that. So my role was to like
Mm.
analyze a lot of the stuff.
Mm.
Like, I've got like a chemistry background, so it's like my jobs have been centered around analyzing a lot of stuff like that. I'm not an expert, but like I'm not an idiot. So like when you look at the actual data on a lot of this stuff, it's like it's all I when I was younger, I did an internship in pharmaceutical marketing. I'll say it like
Mm.
that. So
Mm.
it's they're saying things in a way to make things appear like, for example, they'll be like, you have a 50% more likelihood of not being hospitalized
mm,
right? But the percentage likely of you being hospitalized is 0.005%.
mm,
So like,
mm,
and they're not just doing this with C, they're doing it with a lot of things. And like
mm,
the medical professionals, when I had my old job, this is true by the way, right? When I had my old job, I used to liaise with medical professionals every day. And I'm telling you, you'll sit there and talk to them on the phone, and they'll be like about the flu things and stuff. And they'll be like, "Oh, like I hope the season's good this year," and all this stuff. They literally like they literally want people to get the thing. So it's like a good year for them is like, oh, like there's a flu thing going on. Like, do you know what I'm saying? So
mm,
it's like they, yeah, that's their incentive. But the bless their heart, because I'm not just trying to criticize.
mm,
I genuinely because their job is in diagnostics and like patient care. I don't think that they need to know the ins and outs of everything. How are they gonna know the ins and outs of every single thing? So it's like they're not looking at each V like, oh, let me look at the stats of like they're just like, this is the guidance we've got. I'm looking at the up-to-date report on it. It says there's a 50%. And there's some merit to how they look at it in the sense that they're like, well, if there's a 50% increase, it's better to have it than to not have it, right? Even
mm,
if it's 0.005%. But the problem is that then are they looking at are they looking at the long-term effects sometimes? A lot of the time they are. Are they looking at the all-cause mortality sometimes? And even if you disregard all of that, why is something indicated if it's only affecting a small minority? If it's that case, the number one thing is patient choice. Do you know what I mean? I'm big on the patient choice, and we all should be because it's like, okay, cool. Maybe you got an argument, but at the end of the day, 0.0005%. We're not talking about life or death here. We're talking about your ego, and we're talking about like when I used to do my internship, right? So it's like we're talking about people that have an incentive
mm,
when things go their way with that. You know what I'm saying? And people buy their products, just like any business. If you buy the product,
mm.
so
Yeah, I know that's the scary thing, isn't it? And like you said, all the marketing as well, like the safe and effective, the 97%, like they seem to like 97 as well. That's like a number they kind of use. Like I think it's a strong marketing number. You see that a lot. 97% of climate change
yeah,
scientists said, like I think they know these things. These are like kind of marketing, um, kind of buzzwords and memes that they use to kind of hoodwink the public. And yeah, they've got vested interest. Obviously, they want people to be ill, otherwise they wouldn't be able to sell their products and stuff. So yeah, it's just, it's sad. It's really, really sad. And I'd like to know the name of that group that you're in on Facebook because I'd like to talk to some of the other people that have, gone
right.
through similar stuff. And also, what's the name of the documentary that you were in?
It's called Maternity Broken Trust
Maternity
on
Broken Trust.
ITV.
Yeah.
And one other thing with that RSV thing that I was telling you about.
Mm,
So at the time this is literally like 2 years. So at the time when they were saying this is a rare niche treatment that we only give, if you deny it, that's crazy. It's
mm,
only for premature children in this particular condition. Mate, a year later, I think this year they've made it just part of the schedule. So now it's part of the normal schedule. They were trying to make out like this is a niche thing that I'm not letting them have. And now it's just part of the normal schedule, which is obviously governed by the normal laws of whether a parent should say yes to that or not. It's like this is not a safeguarding concern. Like this is
mm.
tyranny. I allege.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I feel like it's tyranny when
It
you like
is. It
you're
is.
forcing. Do you know what I'm saying? It's medical tyranny. Like
Yeah,
put
it is.
plain and simple. And then it's caused the death of a child
Mm,
because it's caused the death of children before,
mm,
right? And it's like you still don't want to admit that you're wrong, or people don't want to admit that they're wrong when that's happened. They don't want to admit like, maybe we should have not falsely detained someone if that happened anywhere. Maybe we should have listened to the parents if it was
mm,
relevant to like maybe we should have actually double taken looked at the evidence a bit more, like double check the notes and that. Do you know what I
mm.
mean? And they don't
Yeah.
want to do it because they just don't want liability.
Yeah, I know. Amber, I've spoken to nurses, right? And they've said like they go, we know we're killing people. And but we've told that we have to do this and we have to keep it, otherwise we'll lose our jobs. And I've got a mortgage and I've got
Mm.
kids and I have to pay the bills and we know these protocols are killing like people, but we're just doing it. And like I've had nurses like breaking down in tears saying that like they know they've killed people. It's just like the Hippocratic Oath has just gone out the window. Like people are just okay, the World Health Organization or whatever it was in the last few years for the, you know what, it's just following that, following orders has become more important than actually, you know, taking care of people, which is what health is all about, isn't it? It's just gone, it's
Mm.
just fallen off a cliff.
The scary thing is for us is like I actually knew a lot of the stuff that you're saying
Mm.
before my kids,
Uh,
but it's like
mm,
because my kids was premature, like really premature, like my wife, bless her, like you know, you can't care for premature kids 25 weeks. Just
mm,
like so, you're in a situation where you have no choice, and sometimes that's the sad thing in the UK. Like with how big like the healthcare,
mm,
the socialized kind of healthcare is, it's like there's people that they don't have a choice but to go and use these services, and look how they're being treated. Look how things are being like
mm,
not documented properly. Look at the didn't I think the health secretary this year declared the NHS not fit for purpose.
mm,
Like, do you know how much of a big deal it is? I don't think that's ever happened before. Imagine if you ran a corporation and the person that basically assesses your performance, let's say like the not the CEO, but like let's say the market, just call it the market. The market is showing that you literally are gonna like crack your whole thing's gonna crack, your stock's gonna crash.
mm,
Like, doesn't that tell you that something's wrong? Like when your stock is crashing, like
mm.
if the health secretary is saying that this organization is not fit for purpose, if there's the biggest maternity scandal in NHS history, like if there's like record payout every year for medical negligence, number one I think is maternity. Yeah,
Mm.
how I don't understand how these people are not thinking like maybe we're doing something wrong, but no, they're just like no, you're wrong
Mm.
because you're questioning us.
It's a
And I
religion.
really think that
I've done episodes about how like it's become a quasi religion. You know, like people just worship it. You know, unquestioningly. And if you dare to question it, like you're seen as like a yeah, like a pariah, like a you know some some kind of heretic. You know, it's crazy.
yeah, yeah, like oh man, I want to say more stuff, but
Go
like
on.
I just don't.
Do you want to go 5 more minutes?
No,
Because
because
I'm running out of battery as well. But if you want to, is anything you want to like finish up with as well?
you know what, mate? You know what? I'll leave it at that because
Okay.
like there's just so much legal like implications, but basically like I agree with you and I respect what you do on your channel. Like
Mm,
I've seen some things that you posted and like I just like the freedom of thought. You know what I mean? And it's we don't all have to agree.
mm,
We don't all have to like
mm.
accept other people's view on things even, but I respect the fact that at least you're like platforming people with different opinions, and it's like you're taking a risk. I'll
Yeah, I
tell you
know.
that you are taking a risk.
I know. I'm riding the tightrope.
Nowadays,
I'm riding the tightrope anyway. But I mean, yeah, it's someone's got to do it.
people people act like it's not a risk. I'm telling you, mate. If you ever go like court for anything, like in terms of like for your kids, God forbid if you know what I'm
Mm,
saying, or I'm telling you that they're gonna pull this stuff up, mate. I'm telling you
mm,
that it's not. They've got a lot more intelligence than people think. Like,
mm.
did you know that the local councils are allowed to spy on people with drones?
No? What?
Look up yeah. I can't remember what that act is called.
Mm,
It's one of the Telecommunications Act. This is public knowledge. Look it up.
mm,
The local councils are allowed to spy on people with drones. Like they've got a lot of information, mate. And when they
mm,
do these like referrals and stuff, and you see, it's like you get a peek inside how the system works. You get the subject access,
mm, mm,
mate. I'm telling you, there's like 60 professionals on one case from different organizations, and they're all just like passing information between each other, and it's like a big secret network. And I know if they work for them, it's like, oh, I'm just doing my job. But
mm,
when you see it objectively, because they see the computer and what they're typing. But when you see it from a subject access, you do five
mm,
subject access, you see, oh my God, look, this is how the web works. And then you realize, like, oh my God, they're all the same organization because, like,
mm,
these people have got a protocol called da 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 working together to protect children. And then they're like, if this, if information comes from this organization, it's priority. And then they're like, if information comes from here, then we have to act. And then they're like, if information comes from here, we have to document it as record. So it's like they don't even realize that they're all the same organization.
Mm,
That's why when you go, oh, so and so's done this, suddenly the police are at your door. They don't even think that they're persecuting you. They're like, no, I'm acting on a tip. But like the tips come because you've got a protocol that says this is a concern. And if it comes from these people, that you have to act on it.
mm.
So it ends up, people end up being persecuted and you're going, help them being persecuted. And they're like, look at this nutter. He thinks that the police are just going out and targeting you for no reason. Look at this nutter. He thinks that social services have come for no reason. They're following the protocols,
Mm.
just
Yeah.
following orders.
By the way, is there anything
Yeah.
else you want me to link towards your TikTok or any other channels?
Yeah. I think the TikTok is what I'm trying to use now.
Yeah.
So it's Adora's story. Let me just spell it because
Yeah.
her name is spelled in a black way. No, I'm joking. Her name is spelled like this because like my background is Igbo, so yeah, like it's like a African culture, do you know what I mean? But yeah, her name is Adaora, right? That's her name. So the TikTok is Adora Story, ADAORAS_story. And yeah, my name's public. So if anybody wants to contact me, it's ama.maduako@icloud.com, ama.maduako@icloud.com. And yeah, just obviously it's mainly about we want to raise awareness for my daughter. Um, just because of the court proceedings, I didn't want to delve too much into like my daughter, my wife, and stuff, and I tried to tailor my approach a bit more to your channel. So I hope you understand that, mate.
Yeah,
I
no, it's
can't really.
perfect. No, no,
There's a
no, it's
lot I just
absolutely.
can't.
You don't have to go into
Yeah,
all the detail. You just have to give us the story, you know. And is it like what are you looking
yeah.
for? Like what would you like to have happen now? Like what kind of people would you like to reach out to you?
So basically, we wanted to get on like James English or something like that,
Mm,
but
mm,
what we actually want to do is make a documentary. So I've got a charity that I'm trying to set up. It's called Elephant in the Room. So I'll tell the story quickly. So
mm,
when my twins were born, we had an elephant toy and a monkey toy.
mm,
So the monkey toy represented my son, the elephant toy represented my daughter. And every day I'd come back from the ward and I'd like kiss this elephant and like, you're going to be home soon in it, but she didn't make it home. So now, ironically, now we've just been left with this elephant in the room. But like it's gone, obviously, like the elephant in the room is that what's going on in our society that people aren't talking about. So I thought, you know what, let me make a charity. I want to call it Elephant in the Room. And it's what I want to do is I want to interview people different from how you're doing it, but like I want to interview people who have had experiences like this and just let them kind of tell their story and then hopefully like get some of the stories and make like documentary format about
mm,
it. So
mm,
if anybody's like interested in that idea or is a documentary filmmaker or has any connections to the press, that would be amazing because it would be a good tribute to my daughter and also a good way to raise awareness, not just about the health thing, but about the child thing with the your opinions getting taken and you're not getting it back, and you're trying to go to court to get it back and they're not letting you have it back. You know what I mean?
mm, mm.
Like, and kids getting adopted and they're not knowing what I mean because they don't have their family to teach them this. You know what I'm saying? So it's like yeah, I want to kind of like put some
Mm.
awareness on what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Good on you, man. And is everything finished now with the courts, or is you still got to go in there?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They, mate, they literally ran away with their tails between their legs. Soon as let me not talk on it, but soon
Mm.
as certain evidence dropped, now they're all trying to like cover their backs and stuff. So
Mm. Let's
that's how it
expose
goes.
these. Oh, come on, man. We need to expose all this. It's because it's going to save like thousands of lives, you know, just by your story getting out there and getting a bit more coverage of this. So, yeah, like if any other podcast hosts are listening to this or watching this, like, please give a platform here to Amma and like, you know, the story of Adora and like, let's make sure this doesn't happen again. You know, let's try and, you know, shine a bit of a spotlight on this. And yeah, man, I'm so really, really sorry to hear about your story, man. I'm glad you're finding some strength and like hopefully the justice you're gonna get, you know, by getting this story out there and knowing that you were right and is gonna offer a little bit of healing. I know obviously it's never gonna properly heal this, you know, what's gone on for you, but I pray that, you know, you're gonna get, you know, some kind of justice and righteousness in all this, and that's hopefully gonna add to the healing process for you, brother.
Well, yeah, all I can say is like I hope that we're able to work out in the court, I hope we're able to find like meaning in life again and like
Mm,
get my mental health back on track and stuff. And just yeah,
yeah.
that's the main thing. My family is just
Mm,
devastating, but
mm,
got to do what you got. I'm not going to stop fighting for my daughter. So whatever happens, happens at the end of the day now. Like
yeah.
whether I'm homeless,
Mm.
jobless, fight for my daughter. Do you get me? So
Keep fighting, man. Yeah. God bless you, man.